So, Belahi Sensei is the sensei of the Kobudokan Dojo, and we'll get into the wheres and whats and all that sort of stuff during it. But I just want to say thank you, first Sensei, for taking time out of your day to be on the podcast, to have this discussion. I've really been looking forward to it, and just want to say that you make me feel insecure, which is a good thing. Discomfort is a good thing. So welcome.
Thank you, Twadi, for having me. This has been my pleasure, and I've been looking forward to this as well.
Kia ora, welcome to the Invisible Sensei podcast. Karate, Kobudo, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever the style of preference, we all have our own stories and experiences. We are all our own Invisible Sensei. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And again, thanks for taking time to listen. First things first, your philosophy of karate. I mean, we could do the whole kind of, how did you start and so on and so forth. I'm sure we'll get to that. But your philosophy of karate and the way that you do karate is so different, especially in a style like Shotokan. And I don't mean to bag Shotokan, and I certainly am no expert on Shotokan karate. What has led you to fuse the use of all these different training aids into your traditional karate and your kobudo and just your movement, your climbing? What's the commonality there, and what's led you to create this?
To answer that, I'll have to sort of go back a little bit. So you and I have had a few conversations prior to this meeting, and I think I shared that. So I've been training a little over 20 some years, and I'm now in my early 40s. When I was, I think it was maybe back in 2016 or 2017, I was having a lot of back problems, bad sciatica, to the point where, I wasn't sleeping, I could barely walk. And, was really, really struggling with training. I'd been doing pretty, standard traditional weightlifting since I was a teenager. My father was a weightlifter. I got into it. It's always been sort of a thing that I did, all up through my mid 30s. But I found I was getting hurt a lot when I was training. Either you've done deadlifts and things like that. I mean, it's easy to get hurt doing that type of exercise. And not only would I get hurt a lot, but I was getting kind of bored with that kind of training. And I would fall in. I'd get real serious about it, and then I'd fall out of it. And but it never really. It was always something I did on the side. It never really had a connection to my karate. I think I sort of subconsciously hoped that it did, but when I really look back, I wasn't marrying the two activities together very well. So when I got diagnosed with these sort of pretty bad back problems a few years ago, the doctor, they gave my MRI results, and suddenly I felt like I was an 80-year-old man when they told me, all the different things that were going on with my spine. And they were recommending that I go see a neurosurgeon to see, what my options were at that point. And I really didn't like that answer. So I instead decided to start taking yoga. And I'm fortunate to have a yoga studio very close to where I live here. So I started going, and it was agonizing. My back pain during yoga class was sometimes even worse when I would leave. And so it was sort of very hard to stick with it. But I noticed that over time I was getting stronger. And probably over the course of about 6 months of good, regular, steady, consistent practice and training in yoga, my back was getting better. And gradually, as I became stronger in my yoga, I started to notice more and more connections with how it related to the movements in karate. So yoga is very big on structure and alignment and centering, and where you're making pressure with your feet into the ground. And, these are things that I didn't notice right off the bat, maybe because I was so afflicted with my back problems. When I finally got to a point where I could just enjoy the yoga practice and sort of enjoy it for what it was, then I was able to start making connections to where it sort of related to the karate that I was doing. But at the time, my karate was very, I was sort of very lost in my karate at the time. I'd always felt that my karate was very hollow. It didn't have a whole lot of good structure to it. I think on the outside, it looked like I was doing Shotokan karate, but I would probably collapse if you pushed on the right spots in my stance or something like that. I didn't feel like I had that kind of great structure. And so after doing yoga for a couple of years, one of my yoga instructors introduced me to, he's like, hey, he knew I did karate. We had conversations, and he said, hey, have you ever done any mace training? And I said, I don't know, what is that? And he said, I'll bring one in. And he's a real fit guy, does CrossFit and sort of dabbles in various different fitness activities. So he brought one in one day and handed it to me. It was just a 10-pound steel mace. And I sort of tossed it around, swung it around. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of interesting. So I ended up ordering one for myself and looked up, got on YouTube to see if there's some basic instructional videos or what do you do with this thing once you have it. And once I found, some basic training, got some basic fundamentals of the mace, and some time with that, I immediately started seeing how much it was going to benefit the karate that I was doing. When you take just the most fundamental movement of steel mace training is what we call the 360. And so as I've seen me in videos or you've watched others, they're just making this 360 movement, taking it over the head and then centering it right in front. When you have this heavy weight on the end and you're spinning it, it's creating that inertia that pulls on your center. And so it requires you to keep your body center compressed and engaged throughout the entire motion. And your limbs, while your hands have to be strong enough to hold on to the mace, everything else sort of just relax. It's very hard to do mace training if you're real stiff and tight. And as soon as I started making that connection for how that was benefiting my karate, I was hooked. And I couldn't put the mace down. And I started out with a 10-pound mace, and it's amazing the workout that you'll get with that light of a weight. If you come from like a traditional weightlifting background, you think, oh, 10 pounds, nothing. I can bench press 150 pounds or whatever, and it doesn't. Your ego gets in the way. But mace training is something it provides a much more functional practice. And it's changed my karate a lot in that it's made me simply just focus on what my center is doing. My limbs just sort of relax. My hands, my feet, they feel heavy, like heavy clubs. My core, my inner thighs, my legs are just sort of doing all the work, and everything else just to sort of relax and go along for the ride. It's made me this sort of approach has made me more appreciative of my karate, because whereas before I was sort of very very unhappy with where my karate was. Like I said, I felt it was hollow. I've been sort of training on my own for about 14 years, and so without really any sort of direction as to sort of what I wanted to be, where I wanted it to go, or where I wanted to take it. And working with the mace and working with a variety of these other implements that you've maybe seen me use, steel clubs, weighted medicine balls on ropes, water bags, weighted ropes, all of these things have helped me enjoy my training more for the sake of training. As I think you and I talked recently, I said, when I would go do traditional weightlifting and I would sort of have this list of things that I needed to do. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do my squats. I'm going to do my curls. I'm going to do, it's back day, it's leg day. I have to do all these different things, 10 sets of this, 10 sets of this, whatever. And it just felt like homework, and I never enjoyed it. I always dreaded going to the gym. And now, particularly, during this pandemic, we're all, for those of us who are able to do so, we're working from home. Going to the dojo after work is like my recess. It's my playtime. I don't go in with any kind of plan. I don't go with any kind of expectations of myself. I don't say, all right, I'm going to go to the dojo and I'm going to do, this kata 15 times in a row, nonstop to get my heart. No, I go in, I show up, I grab the nearest thing I find, which is usually a mace. I start swinging that around for a bit. Maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 40 without, again, no plan. I'm not counting reps. I'm not counting sets. And then when I get tired of that, I grab something else. Maybe I'm shadow boxing. Maybe I'm running kata. Maybe I grab kettlebells. And I just sort of flow it sounds aimless, but I sort of flow through these different activities for an hour, hour and a half. I mean, time just sort of melts away when I start training, and I look forward to it so much every day because I learn so much when I'm doing this. Because it when you take the expectation off of yourself of saying, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, today I've got to go in and I'm going to try and do 160 pounds instead of 150. When you remove all that, you just sort of free yourself to the what karate can teach you, what your body can teach you, and what you can learn just by sort of letting go of everything. I don't know if I've answered your question. It's sort of a long, winding answer, but yeah, it's made my practice more functional. And I think so. A good friend of mine, David Gimberline, who I owe a lot to my karate progress. He's a gentleman. He teaches out of he lives in Minnesota. He teaches Shotokan. He's got a background. He did a lot with Sensei Nishiyama, and he's been training 40 plus years, I believe. But I was introduced to him back in 05, I think, 06. And at a time when I was, a young, fresh, probably a Shodan, Nidan, you're cocky, you're in a small school, you sort of think you know it all. And he literally wiped the floor with me. I mean, and I don't mean like we sparred and he beat me up, but I mean, he showed where all of my flaws and pain points were. I mean, I had no structure. I mean, he really showed that there was more to all this than just, making your kata look good. There's all these internal pieces that took me years and years and years to finally understand. And he's been a great help. He's always been open to giving me feedback when I've had questions. But he made me appreciate more functional training in the sense that, your karate training should be about longevity. And, we look back at the old masters, Funakoshis, the Miyagis, they trained until their old age. They trained up until they died. And, if your training is making it so that you're so injured all the time that you can't, you can't defend yourself. I mean, if you're sparring full contact all the time and breaking limbs and, you're just in pain all the time, what are you going to do when someone actually tries to attack you on the street? You're injured, right? But I think your training should make you healthier, and you should be, training in ways that makes your body stronger and makes you feel good. I feel amazing when I leave the dojo after a good 2 hours, and I've just been letting go, just working out. Like I said, maybe I've been doing kata, maybe I'm swinging the mace, but I feel just mental clarity. My body feels great, and I think it should always be that way, right? I think that our karate should always make us feel good. We shouldn't be feeling, I don't know, it shouldn't be a painful experience, I guess. I don't know. That's maybe an odd perspective, but as in the past couple of years, I've grown to appreciate it more than I probably would have before.
And one of my favorite sayings is that the more complex the pursuit, the more the need for the simplicity of play. So where does play enter into a study of karate? Because I know we had a conversation the other day and we talked about the need sometimes to drop the whole focus on street combat. Will this work in the street? So where does play fit into combat?
I think it sort of goes back to that concept of shuhari, the cycle of learning, in a sense that we get, if the first stage is to sort of copy what your teachers did, if we look at this if we take the analogy of art, right? So if I want to learn how to draw, and the first thing I might do is I start tracing another drawing, right? And I get really good at tracing it. But if that's all we ever do, we don't ever just play and sketch and try new things, then we really used to get locked into that process. I have to make my kata look exactly like my sensei's all the time. Well, have you ever just taken the movements and just, played with them, do them a different direction, do your kata backwards, just take these two, put them in a different order. If you're exploring application in Bonkai, it means being sort of just open to different possibilities and not necessarily what is always handed to us by our sensei. I think a lot of martial artists, I think they get sort of either locked into a particular way of doing things, and they sort of let their style define their limitations, where, you know, we have a lot more freedom in what we do than I think we give ourselves credit to. But as far as combat goes, yeah, I mean, just, you know, whether you're doing free sparring sessions where you just sort of, you know, if you're used to doing things by a particular rule set, you know, throwing some of those rules out and just, you know, having that sort of openness to explore other ways of doing things. Like, you know, I've seen Shotokan people do sparring, and, you know, someone might try to do a throw and they stop and say, "Oh, we don't do throws." Like, well, just, that's okay, but just try it and see, you know. Try doing a headbutt, you know, try doing some of those things that you feel more naturally inclined to do, because a lot of times what's more natural is probably going to be more effective. But oftentimes we let the stylistic demands sort of dictate how we respond to things when we don't really have to. And you know, that's sort of how I approach my training as well, and that I don't put those sort of expectations upon myself. I just sort of, I don't know, play and explore and try different things. And if it's something feels good, then I probably keep doing it. It's liberating for me, I guess.
And in terms of that approach, do you think that necessity has been the mother of that, of inventing that approach for yourself? Were there people that kind of led you in that direction? Was it a process? Because to me, you strike me as someone who approaches karate and martial arts in general and movement as this ongoing kind of experiment. So what led you to these kind of realizations?
I think it started, so I've always been, even before, you know, my problems with my back. I'll give Gimberline Sensei's credit again. Like I said, that ever since that first interaction that I had with him, I've sort of been personally obsessed with improving and building those internal connections and pieces to my karate, and trying different methods of seeing how you know, because I didn't have the benefit of having a sensei to push me in those directions or to pressure test me in those particular ways. I had to find ways to do it on my own. And when I you know, first started working with the mace, and I started feeling those things for the first time, like, oh, that's what that is. I'm always asking myself, can I do more? Okay, what if I try this? Okay, this feels really good. How does this feel? So if I have this good, strong, centered feeling when I'm doing this particular movement with a mace, where else do I see that movement in a kata? Or where do I see that in a particular karate technique? Can I replicate that sensation or that feeling in my karate training in some way? You know, if we're doing a particular sequence of movements in a yoga class, you know, I try to really quiet my mind and listen to my body. I know that that's such a cliche thing to say, but we miss so much when we just are slamming out repetitions, you know, 100 punches over and over and over again. Well, they might be really bad punches, but because we've got to get to that 100 count, we're not paying attention to all the other little things that are going on inside that could be making those much easier and much smoother. It's the same in yoga. So once I started being able to sort of quiet my mind and listen and feel where I was strongest, where just making little adjustments with my feet or my legs or my posture, where that felt good, and then taking that, okay, that felt really great. How does that apply to this particular karate movement? How does, you know, can I find those relationships? And the more I do that, the more I constantly ask that question, can I do more? Or what if, you know, just constantly pushing myself, the more I see relationships between these activities. So my yoga, my karate, mace training, climbing, all of these things are they're supportive of one another. So, you know, my yoga is for basically repairing my body, is keeping my joints healthy and flexible and strong. And it supports the hard climbing that I do. It supports the hard karate that I do. The mace training keeps my muscles strong, keeps my joints sort of good and lubricated, and my shoulders. And it's everything that helps facilitate a strong functional practice with my karate, because I want to be able to do this as long as I possibly can. But yeah, I think it's just constant. I never stop asking myself, can I do more? I rarely ever do the same workout twice in a row. You know, if I go to the dojo later today, you know, I'll do some basic things probably that I know, but I'm always trying new things every time. You know, it's there's always something more to learn, it seems. I haven't found an end to this yet. It seems to be sort of a bottomless pit of potential where, you know, I can just, my karate can keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's a simple, for me, it's a simpler approach, because the thing that I see in common with all these different physical activities that I do is that tie to the body center, being, you know, being centered. You know, we read that all the time in the old karate text, the hara, you know, the soul lives in the hara, the samurai, blah, blah, blah. But I think, you know, that it's where that comes from is it really is tied to good, efficient, healthy movement of the body. And, you know, people nowadays, we carry so much stress on our shoulders, we're hunched over our keyboards and everything. But when we take the time to like really look and listen how we're carrying ourselves, it's all related. So my training is so focused just on building my center, my core, and that core movement, that it makes everything else a little bit easier.